All right, today we're going to decrypt what might be a radical new user manual for your own mind. I'm talking about a way to translate those weird, glitchy feelings into something you can actually understand and, maybe even manage. So let's open up the command line for your brain and see what's really running in the background.
You know that feeling, right? That little bit of internal lag, the random emotional pop-ups that show up out of nowhere, or the complete system crashes that always seem to happen at the absolute worst moments. Well, I'm here to tell you it's not just you. There's a fundamental reason for this, a deep system incompatibility that we're all dealing with.
And the root of the problem is right here, our brains, this Pleistocene wetware. It's biological hardware that evolved for a pretty slow, predictable world. Think Savannah, not Silicon Valley. But we're trying to run that ancient hardware in this chaotic, high-speed data sphere of the 21st century. And that mismatch, that's the source of the psychological glitch, that constant feeling of system latency. So what exactly is this glitchy code? Well, this framework takes a classic psychological concept and reframes it in a pretty brilliant new way. It calls it the Shadow's legacy code. First things first, let's define our terms. In this model, your conscious mind, your ego, well, it thinks it's the system administrator. It's the part of you that's at the keyboard, managing your daily tasks, totally convinced it's in complete control of the entire machine. But, and this is a huge but, it's not. See, running in the background with the highest level of administrative access, we're talking root privileges here, is the shadow. In classic Jungian psychology, this is the unconscious, repressed part of you. But in our model, it's like unaudited, undocumented legacy code from your past. And yeah, it can hijack the system at any time. And this is where it gets incredibly practical. So imagine as a kid, you learned that when adults were arguing, the safest thing to do was just be quiet and invisible. You basically wrote a script in your head. If conflict is detected, then initiate shutdown. It worked perfectly back then. But now, that same legacy code is running automatically in a board meeting, causing you to totally freeze up when you're challenged. The old software is causing a new crash. So, how do we debug this mess? How do we even find these old hidden scripts? Well, this framework proposes a really powerful diagnostic tool, the Shadow Dictionary. Think of it like a lookup table that maps our messy, confusing psychological states to precise technical failure modes. Let's just start with a big one. You're not just burned out. No, your psychological server is experiencing what's called a distributed denial of service attack. So on one side, you've got the wounded healer archetype. That's the person who just can't say no, who compulsively helps everyone else. And on the other side, you've got a computer server being flooded with thousands of requests a second. In both cases, the system gets so overwhelmed by external demands that it just completely shuts down. It becomes unavailable even for its own essential functions. And the mechanics are shockingly identical. People-pleasing? That's basically like running a server with no firewall. You're just accepting every single incoming request, no questions asked. That brain fog you feel? That's your brain CPU deliberately slowing itself down. It's called thermal throttling to prevent a total meltdown. And that emotional numbness? That's just the system entering safe mode to preserve core functions. It's not a moral failing, it's a totally predictable system failure. Okay, let's look at another common glitch. You know that feeling of being a fraud? That constant worry that you're going to be found out? That's not just a feeling. Your system is flagging an internal spoofing attack. Imposter syndrome is basically your system's own internal alarm going off. It's warning you that its public identity, your competent social mask or persona, is a falsified identity. Your system literally perceives that you've gained your job or your status through what's called privilege escalation, kind of like a hacker, instead of legitimate authentication. So you end up living in this constant fear of an audit that's going to expose the massive gap between the mask and the real you. Okay, now for one of the most powerful mappings in the entire dictionary. We're talking about that explosive, out-of-control anger. That's not you losing your temper. No, that's a very specific and catastrophic system vulnerability called a buffer overflow. And this is a really critical distinction to make. See, anger is a normal emotion. Rage is a system takeover. In the world of cybersecurity, a buffer overflow is pretty simple. You try to cram way too much data into a container that's too small. The data spills over and corrupts everything next to it. Well, for your brain, that container is your prefrontal cortex, your center for logic. When an emotional trigger is just too big, it overflows that container and overwrites your logic circuits with some primitive malicious code. So here's the chain reaction happening inside your head. The trigger comes in, and it's too big for your mental buffer.
Your logic and self-control programs get completely overwritten. The whole operating system crashes in what tech people call a kernel panic, which, by the way, is why people in a rage often have memory gaps or blackouts. And just like a crashed computer, you need a full hard reboot, like a night's sleep, to get the system back online.
Okay, so we've diagnosed the glitches. But this dictionary isn't just about sticking labels on problems, it's about giving you the tools to actually fix them. It's about making that shift from being a confused user to becoming your own system administrator. And the key to all of this is a concept called cognitive observability. Really, it's just the skill of learning to read your own internal system logs as they happen. It's about seeing the error message before the program crashes. It's about gaining real-time awareness of your own mental state. And this is the actual script you can run, right inside your own mind. So imagine you feel that defensive anger rising when someone gives you feedback. Instead of just reacting, you run this process. Step 1, identify the archetype. Okay, that feeling is the warrior, the part of you that defends your identity at all costs. Step 2, map the failure mode. All right, the technical glitch is a firewall false positive. Step 3, analyze the mechanism. I'm not listening, I'm just dropping all incoming data packets labeled feedback. Step 4, check latency. How long did it take me to notice this was happening? Maybe 3 seconds? And then, the most important part, step 5, act. Instead of just counterattacking, I can consciously choose to update my firewall rule to actually inspect this feedback for valuable data. And this table really brings it all together. It shows how these patterns work. For instance, the puer aeternus, that's the eternal child archetype who fears commitment, is just caught in an infinite loop, never resolving. The overextended wounded healer is suffering a DDoS attack. Rage is a buffer overflow, and that defensive warrior is just a misconfigured firewall. You can see how each psychological state has a clear, understandable technical parallel. This quote right here, it perfectly captures the massive shift in perspective this framework offers you. You gain a sense of agency. You stop being a victim of your emotions, and you start becoming the administrator of your own system. It's such a simple line of text, but it's a profound shift. It detaches you from the chaos and puts you firmly back in the control seat. Look, this isn't just a clever metaphor. It's a whole new language for self-awareness. It really is a user manual for the most complex machine you will ever operate. So the only question left is, now that you have it, are you ready to stop being the user and start being the admin?